Welcome to the Dog Nation Postgame Show, presented by the UGA Bookstore. Stop by the UGA Bookstore for all your game day apparel. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into our Dog Nation Postgame Show, presented by the UGA Bookstore. We are at the UGA Bookstore, at least for the final time here in this regular season, as Georgia comes out and gets a 37-14 win today over Georgia Tech, capping off another undefeated regular season, second consecutive year. Georgia goes 12-0 in the regular season. Obviously now, after clean old-fashioned hay, turns its attention to what comes next, the SEC Championship next Saturday against LSU, and what Dog fans hope is a trip to the college football playoff after that. So obviously we've got a lot to talk about today as we figure out where Georgia is as it goes undefeated here once again. We're going to invite you to be a part of this here today, too. We'll invite you to join our show via Zoom. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or at dognation.com, you should see a link to click into right there in the comments section. Click that link, join us live, and you can share your thoughts on UGA here today with its win against Georgia Tech. And also, if you're leaving the stadium and you want to come by and see us, we're at the second floor of the UGA Bookstore. You can pop on over here, and we'll give you a chance to be on air with me, and you can essentially do your call live and in person and share your thoughts about the dog. So if you're leaving Sanford Stadium, come on by and see us at the UGA Bookstore, and you can be a part of that here today. We'll also have Terrence Edwards stopping by and joining us here as well. So a lot of folks getting a chance to have some thoughts here about what Georgia had going on today with its win against Georgia Tech. So we'll go ahead and line up your calls, get ready to share a lot of thoughts with you. I'll just tell you this here briefly, that when it comes to a lot of what has happened for Georgia over the last year or two, you know, so many times you're going to find yourself going back to say, well, this is the last time this happened since 1980 or 1981, you know, those early 80s glory years that involved Vince Dooley and Herschel Walker. And yet today you kind of find yourself realizing, as you went back through the annals of history in your mind, that Georgia did something today it did not do back then. You know, Georgia did not have back-to-back undefeated regular seasons back during the Herschel Walker era of the early 80s. This is a distinction that this era of Georgia football has, that era did not have. And so I think pausing to appreciate how special it is to walk out of this stadium once again and to walk out of a regular season once again in which Georgia did not taste defeat, you realize just how special and unique this period's been for Georgia football and just how awesome all of that's been. So I know a lot of Georgia fans want to weigh in on that here today. In fact, I think we have a Georgia fan ready to come on by and be with us here right now. So we'll talk to folks in person. We'll talk to you via Zoom. We'll talk to you with Terrence Edwards here coming up there as well. Stepping over, how are you? Good to see you. Tell us your name and tell us your thoughts about the Dogs here tonight.
Tim, it was just a real good win. I'm real excited to see us go in there and take care of some unfinished business against LSU. Let's get it done. Go Dogs.
I think that's a really good point. Unfinished business, and the fact that that's one of the few SEC teams that Kirby Smart's not beaten since he's been here at Georgia. And you obviously have the bad taste in the 2019 SEC Championship in your mouth a little bit. So that's going to maybe be on the Dogs' mind next Saturday, right?
Yes, sir. Will. Let's do it.
Hey, I appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for being a part of the show. So Georgia fans kind of weighing in on how they feel about all of this, and we'll take your comments via Zoom and all of that there as well, including Frank, who joins us here on the Dog Nation Post-Game Show, presented by the UGA Bookstore. Frank, thanks for being a part of our show today. How about them Dogs? How'd you feel about this 37-14 win over Georgia Tech here in clean old-fashioned hay?
Hey, BA, how are you doing today? Good to be on again.
I'm doing well, Frank. Good to see you.
Just not really – I didn't really like how the game started, but I understand. Big rivalry game for us. But what I did like is I liked how we kept our composure. Everything seemed to be very calm, collective. I mean, if you're watching from the outside, you're thinking, guys, you know, these guys aren't really in it. You know, what's going on? But I thought an all-around performance, composure was kept very calm. And we just, you know, let the game play out, and we did our thing, and defense stepped up. I mean, I like a few more of those plays back. I thought they robbed us a couple times on a couple of those touchdowns with, you know, Stetson on the goal line. But, you know, it is what it is, and we look forward to going for 2-22.
I like it, Frank. Thanks for being here. Go for 2-22 indeed. I appreciate your phone call, and I think you're bringing up a couple of pretty important points. First of all, you can't really sugarcoat this. For as special as it is to be undefeated again, and as nice as it is to get a dominant win against Georgia Tech here today, the truth is the first half of this game started anyway but that. It was a very slow start, alarmingly slow, and I tweeted this out before the game that I felt like the atmosphere around kickoff was kind of reminiscent of of a G-Day or a scrimmage. Even games earlier this year against, the likes of Samford, Kent State, I felt like the atmosphere pregame, the atmosphere before opening kickoff was far more intense than what I felt like it was today. This was definitely a crowd that was a little bit sleepy coming off of Thanksgiving or enjoying some pretty fall weather, whatever the reason was. That was definitely the case with that. And unfortunately, it kind of seemed to bleed over into how the Georgia team started today there as well. This was not pretty in the early going, but as Frank said, you kind of shake it off. You play much better after that. You certainly get a much more comfortable win. And there was also the weird issue with the officiating today where a pretty clear Stetson Bennett touchdown was, not allowed to stand. The play before that, you might have made the case that Arian Smith should have been given a touchdown. And then the touchdown that Georgia scored right after that with Brock Bowers, you might have made a case that I'm not quite so sure Bowers did catch that cleanly, but clearly Bennett should have been a touchdown. He wasn't given one. Then Bowers was given a touchdown, in which I'm not even sure that was reviewed in that situation when that probably looked more questionable than the others. So it was definitely an odd day when it comes to the officiating, but ultimately it ends up being a great win for UGA. In fact, for more on that here right now, on our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore, let's welcome in Terrence Edwards, who had a chance to see this here today, and he's also feeling good because his Milton team also earned another victory last night. They continue to fight on in these 7A playoffs here in the state of Georgia. But Terrence, you know what it's about when you play Georgia versus Georgia Tech. We've had some commenters mentioning how great it is to be undefeated again, but also how concerning it was to kind of find yourself in that sort of slow start position, a place that Georgia has been in before already this year when it comes to some of its home games. What was your overall impression today, Terrence, of what you saw from UGA?
I was coming into this as a Debbie Downer because I was very concerned about the way we played offensively the last two games. And last week I put it on the win with the excuse. And this week it was perfect conditions. I don't think we was able to throw the football very well early on. So that part of the offense for the last 2 weeks I'm really been concerned about. But the last, 2.5 quarters, my mind kind of changed because we were able to do what we want offensively, move the ball up and down the field. So my attitude and my emotions was all over the place today. But the end game is to win. Another regular season undefeated. Now we put all our attentions on the SEC championship game.
Got some Georgia fans joining us here live. Tell us your name.
Bryce Sutherland.
What's your name?
Dean Patterson.
What'd you guys feel at the game today?
We started off not too well, but we came back and it was a good game overall.
How about you?
Well, dogs on top. We number one all the time. And they gave us a little bit of struggle at the start, but all of a sudden we started rolling. They couldn't stop us.
Hey, guys, thanks for coming by. I appreciate that. And that kind of sums it up what Terrence was talking about there as well. You get off to a slow start. You're kind of worried about what that means. And then after that, you kind of pull away. And, Terrence, I don't know what you kind of attribute this to, whether it be, I thought that Georgia definitely played its cards very close to the vest today. They weren't really throwing the ball very much at all today. And I don't know if that's about saving everything for LSU or just didn't really feel like they need to in this game today against Georgia Tech. I'm not really quite so sure what you attribute that to, but I thought it was about as conservative a game plan from Georgia as you're ever going to see. Maybe that's by design. Maybe they didn't feel like they needed more of that. But certainly they were not showing you very much today in this game against Georgia Tech. They kept a lot of that playbook still pretty much wrapped in ice for the most part.
Most definitely did look very vanilla. It didn't look like the explosive offensive game planning that we've seen in the previous weeks, especially for the likes of Tennessee and the other games that we've seen. Our offense exploded from all three levels, the receivers, the tight end, and running back. But I'm going to give it up for the offensive line as well. We really spoke early in the season and really was concerned about why we wasn't able to run the football. But for the past 3 or 4 weeks, we have really been able to establish the running game. Kenny McIntosh and crew have really done a great job of finding holes and exploiting them. So if there's something that we've been able to work on, it's the running game, and that will bode well down in the SEC championship game and then into the playoffs.
We got some updates on some scores for some games that are taking place or just concluded, and a couple of these are pretty eye-opening, so we'll give that to you. I'll also remind you this is our Dog Nation postgame show. We're presented by the UGA Bookstore here at the UGA Bookstore, and boy, right down here right now, all kinds of folks getting stocked up on some great Christmas gifts. I'm wearing a great zipper, kind of almost like a windbreaker type jacket here. Incredibly nice. This is an example of the kind of things you get from the UGA Bookstore. So if you got Georgia fans in your life, you want to get stocked up and get them ready to go for Christmas season, great way to do that. Great looking UGA apparel. You look down here to my left, down the first floor where all the shopping's going on. Everybody's having a great time. By the way, speaking of great ideas for holiday gifts, how about the Chub Crunch cereal? We've been telling you about that a lot so far this season. Don't forget, that's here too. Really kind of an example of just how creative and fun the UGA Bookstore is with the very special Georgia-themed gift ideas. They've got all that for you here this holiday season, so you can stop by and see it if you're on your way out of the stadium. Or if you can't be in Athens today, go to UGABookstore.com and you can shop with the dog shop all year long right there. If you're here in person, you want to be on the show, you can pop over here. We'll give you a chance to talk about these dogs. We'll let you do that if you'd like to, and we'll go back out to our Zoom calls there as well. Ryan Walker, speaking of great apparel, he's always got a fun T-shirt designed and made. I'm sure he's ready to show one of those off again today there as well. Ryan, thanks for being back with us here on the Dog Nation postgame show, presented by the UGA Bookstore. How about them dogs? How'd you feel about this game here today?
How about those dogs, BA? I didn't get a shirt for this week or whatnot. I got something cooking real special for the SEC championship next week. What's going on, Terrence Edwards?
Nice.
Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Hands down, I'll say this. We ran the ball like Terrence Edwards said. You know, I'm glad to see Kendall Milton starting to get his feet back up under him. He's actually starting to get comfortable with hitting the holes. Passing game really wasn't there today. You know, it was off and on today. We got robbed out of a couple of touchdowns. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not one to criticize the refs because we're a good football team. And, you know, like Marvin Hagler used to say, you know, these were his judges. Guess what? We got to take the game out of the hands of the refs and do what we do, play Georgia football. And shout out to the defense because, you know, after they got slapped in the mouth early, they just bowled up and they just went ahead and shut everything down in the second half and really showed why we're the number one team in the nation. So now Clemson gets upset, and now you have Ohio State getting ready to get beat. It's like, look, whoever stands in front of Georgia, we just going to pretty much put foots to them. So it's just what it is. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Ryan, well said as always. I appreciate that. And Terrence, I think he brings up a really good point. When you look at what's happening around the rest of the country today, you do have South Carolina beating Clemson. That's a playoff contender that's now out of the conversation here. Ohio State, in the midst of losing, and frankly losing pretty handily to Michigan right now, Terrence, that's a team at the beginning of the season, preseason, everybody had them ranked ahead of Georgia here, and yet Ohio State's now going to have to try to fight for its playoff loss without the benefit of winning the Big Ten championship. That if you want to get a better idea of kind of where things stand with Georgia, look at the other playoff contenders who would love to be in the position the Dogs are in right now. I think Ryan brings a really good point with that.
Oh, most definitely. At the end of the day, I'm definitely happy that we are undefeated and still ranked number one because, with Clemson going down today, with Ohio State assuming that they're going to lose this game as well, and they just don't know what their playoff availability is going to be now. So I think we're pretty sure that
that's right.
Win, lose, or draw, we're probably going to be into the playoffs, and that's a great feeling for the fan base. I definitely would love going into this playoff as the SEC champs and the clear-cut number one seed. So I think we have a better feeling than the Ohio State fan base right now.
No doubt about that. We've got a Georgia fan here in person. Tell us your name.
Walker Leviton.
What'd you feel at the game today?
Oh, Georgia Tech was way under my expectations. Like, they should just quit. Like, leave the league. And Mimi, if you're watching this, I love you.
There you go. Appreciate you stopping by. A little shout out there. Nothing wrong with that. And also not too impressed what you saw from Georgia Tech. And, Terrence, you know what it feels like to be in this rivalry. You got a big win in the stadium back in 2002 in your senior year. And you probably shouldn't lose sight of it. Obviously, we're going to look ahead to the SEC championship and all the stuff that's going to happen after this. But this was another win for Georgia in clean old-fashioned hate. And that's the kind of thing I know for a lot of Georgia fans, they're going to be really happy about there as well. So a little trash being talked in the direction of the Yellow Jackets. I guess that's not too bad of a thing.
Oh, most definitely. Anytime we can beat them, that's something that the Georgia fan base love. I love. It's family ties for me with my older cousin, Chris Edwards. went to Georgia Tech. So
That's
it's
right.
always a family. It's always a great, neat family conversation for me today. So I'm going to be able to send him a few texts after this game. And my hometown of Washington County has a lot of Georgia Tech fans there, believe it or not. So Facebook is lit up right now with the back and forth with them as well. But anytime you get an opportunity to win that Governor's Cup, it's always sweet, something that can never be taken away from you. And I got 2 in my household.
I like to hear that. We got some dog fans here at the UGA bookstore, and if you're leaving the stadium, we're going to be here. Stop by and see us. You can do your holiday shopping down the first floor. You can come up and talk to us here on the second floor. We'll celebrate Georgia undefeated in a regular season again, looking ahead to the SEC championship next Saturday and the chance to be 13-0, punching a ticket for the college football playoff. We got a young man here. He's got the Chubb Crunch cereal. Tell us your name.
Jacob.
Jacob, and what's your name?
Daniel Busby.
Nice to meet you guys, and good to have you here. How did y'all feel about the game here today?
Pretty good. Yeah.
We were worried at first, but we're glad we pulled out the win. Our first game together at a Georgia game, very first game. Big fan of you. And Santel, when are y'all going to do Before the Hedges together again? I missed that, man. Y'all make a great duo. Y'all ought to do it.
We have a lot of fun doing that, and obviously Jeff Santel, a great colleague of ours. So where did y'all come in today to traveling in from to see the game?
Temple, Georgia.
Temple, Georgia. That's great. And I'm like you. You get off that slow start today, you're kind of worried, what's this going to be? Is this going to be one of those games that stays close all day long? Georgia had to kind of fight there at the beginning, but they seem to kind of shake off those cobwebs pretty well.
Yeah, we had to rely on the running game a lot more in the throwing game. I was not too happy with Stetson today. I think he could have played a little better, but I'm not giving up on him.
Sure,
I'm not one of them Stetson haters.
Well, I understand that. Well, listen, guys, thanks for coming by. Enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend, and congratulations on being here for your first ever Georgia game and seeing a big win for the Dogs here right now. By the way, if you're joining us live, you can click in the Zoom comment section on Facebook or YouTube or any of the comment sections there. You can see a link to join us, and we'll let you give your thoughts here on a UGA. We'll bring another Georgia fan on here for a moment. Tell us your name. What's your name?
Van Shirley.
How'd you feel about the game today?
It was a little rough at first, but then after 10 minutes, we started getting a lot of plays, and yeah, go Dogs.
Hey, that's right, Vance. Thanks for that. I like it. He said trying to get 2 years in a row in that national championship, or as we say it around here, go for 2 in 22. And Terrence, I think you're hearing a little bit of a theme with the folks who are joining us here from the UGA bookstore. This was not pretty to start with, and you didn't sugarcoat that yourself either. Georgia pretty clearly was in a funk to begin this game, and Tech took advantage of that. But I guess you got to give a little bit of credit here for the ability to shake all that off. But this was not a thing of beauty to watch here in this first half, and certainly the first quarter was pretty rough in an extremely significant way, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think that we played very well in the first, especially that first drive defensively. It seemed like we were sleepwalking. But I'm going to give Georgia Tech some credit. They had a unique game plan that they knew they couldn't run up the middle on us, so they really attacked the perimeter, and they did a good job blocking on the perimeter at the wide receiver position. They did a great job with number 4, a very shifty running back. He really made Keely Ringo look bad on one of those, just a check down route to the running back. So you got to give props to Georgia Tech there. I think they played their best game. I don't think 10 out of 10 they won't beat us, just not talented enough. But they really came out and played hard, played well, and you got to give Coach Keys an opportunity to really be considered for that job. So I hate giving Georgia Tech any kind of props, but they actually played well, and it seemed like we didn't take them. We didn't respect them enough to come out and play Georgia football in that first half.
Got some more folks here live. They're going to join us. But before that, go into our Zoom calls for a moment. Randy's in Tifton. Randy, you're next up here on the Dog Nation Postgame Show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Randy, how about them Dogs? How'd you feel about a 12-0 regular season and another win against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets? Randy, are you there? Go ahead. I can't tell if Randy's there or not. Okay, we may have lost Randy there for a moment. Got a Georgia fan here live on the scene. What's your name?
Elijah.
Elijah, how'd you feel about the game today?
It was freaking awesome.
Pretty awesome. What was your favorite part?
When Georgia took the lead
That's my favorite part, too. Elijah, thanks for stopping by and being a part of the program. So a lot of families here today, a lot of young dog fans enjoying themselves. We heard from a family a moment ago saying got a chance to come out and be a part of this for the very first time today. So a lot of fun there. We got some more Georgia fans who are going to join us here, and we'll let them pop on, be a part of this. Hop on over here. Tell us your name and tell us how you feel about Georgia today. You can step right here so the folks can see you on camera.
Jesse Dillinger.
Hey, Jesse, we recognize your name, one of our frequent commenters. That's great to see. How about them dogs indeed? And how about what you feel about the game today?
Started off a little slow. I feel like they were giving up a lot in the screen game early, but then the defense kind of settled in the second half. Kenny McIntosh did his best James Cook impression out there today.
I think that you got a glimpse today, Jesse, of the fact that down the stretch here, I think that Kenny McIntosh has the potential to be really one of the most important players for Georgia. Seems to be coming into his own at the right time, kind of shaking off that fumble he had against Florida a couple of weeks ago, and kind of right now kind of coming into his own in a very big way.
All right. I think so. Yes, sir.
Well, Jesse, thanks for being a part of the program. Appreciate that. And, Terrence, the other point that Jesse makes, and I think you do have to give Tech a little bit of credit for this, I thought their perimeter blocking early in this game was really, pretty impressive when they're throwing some of those, what you want to call them, like wide receiver screens, things like that, kind of getting out there. I thought their guys did a pretty good job of giving their playmakers, to the extent they have playmakers, but giving their guys a chance to do something with the football. It seemed like they had a little bit of a plan to maybe try to target Keely Ringo a bit here today, but in the early stages, it seemed like Georgia Tech had a little bit of an offensive game plan that was working.
I think so. I think this offense coordinator did a great job of having a plan to attack this Georgia defense. I don't think he thought it would be very successful to try to run the ball up the middle against this Georgia defense. So he really did attack the perimeter. And the receivers did a great job of blocking on the perimeter. And when early on, when Georgia Tech had opportunity to take shots down the field, they did and connected. And they did seem like they attacked Keely. I don't know if they just went to the short side of the field because it's the shortest throw, or they just decided that they believe they can get penalties against Keely or complete passes. So, again, I think Keely started off rough and ended the game strong. But somebody that's probably going to be a first-round pick, I just think for these next, hopefully, 3 games, he has the best games of his life because teams are going to try to attack him. And he should want that competition. He should want teams to try to attack him because he should feel he's the best player on the field.
That's exactly right. Before we go back out to the phones and bring in more dog fans, Terrence, what did you think about that odd sequence involving the officials today where I thought they had a pretty rough day all the way around, but you had what seemed like could have been a touchdown for Arian Smith. That was taken away. Obviously, what should have been a touchdown for Stetson Bennett, and yet that was, not, replay didn't seem to convince them of that. And I thought that was a terrible call. And then coming right back after that, you have the Brock Bowers touchdown, which seemed like it might have been a little bit more questionable than the Bennett touchdown was before that. This was certainly an odd day for officiating. We saw a call that I hadn't seen in a million years, the idea of aiding the ball carrier, kind of like the old school Bush push from 20 years ago or so, which I actually thought had now been legalized, and you could do that in a football game. I thought this was a pretty strange day for the officials. Do you agree that it was kind of an odd day for the refs today?
Yes, I think so. And actually, there was an NFL game this past Sunday that I saw that call a betting the runner. So that's the second time in life that I think I've seen that call. But I think the most egregious call to me, BA, was the 4th down and 1 run from Brock Bowers when it was a good call with him using the face mask, but I also thought that was a horse collar that the defender used the back plate to bring the rusher down, so it should have been offsetting penalties. So I think that penalty there was one that was a big one that wasn't called in our favor, but I think 2 penalties should have been called on that play. Face mask because it was, but also horse collar should have been called on that play as well.
Let's bring in Ace Dog. Ace Dog, you're next here on the Dog Nation Postgame Show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Ace Dog, thanks for being with us.
Hello, BA. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Ace Dog. Thanks for being here. I sure can.
Yeah, I agree with Terrence on that Brock Bowers call there. I think that should have been an incidental face mask instead of the 15-yarder. And later on in the game, their running back stiff-armed our defender. He did the same thing, got his fingers inside the face mask, and they didn't call that one. the refereeing was horrible today, and I'm glad our number one team in the country finally showed up in the second half because they wasn't there in the first half. And if they play like that next week, it's going to be bad news, BA.
You know, Ace Dog, I think you bring up a good point, and I appreciate the phone call. And I guess, Terrence, to go along with the point that Ace Dog mentioning, because I think the things that he's saying are pretty fair here, we have seen Georgia, Terrence, this year when it's played high-level opponents, you know, an Oregon team at the beginning of the year, obviously Tennessee a couple of weeks ago. When Georgia has needed to be at its best, it has found a different gear than it's shown at other point in times of the season. Terrence, as a former player, is this a switch that Georgia can just flip anytime that it wants to? I mean, how much would you find yourself concerned that you do have Kent State game and a little bit of the Samford game and, the Missouri game, and now, at least for a portion of today's game, where Georgia, as Ace said, did not really look like the number one team, and yet when they've faced a quality opponent, they have certainly been at that level. Do you think, Terrence, this is a team right now that can just sort of flip that switch and be what it needs to be in the moment? Obviously, next Saturday, a time to do that. You know, how do you feel about that?
It just seemed like this team just play to the level of their competition. And I don't say that we're playing down, but we play even keel. Even though we have more talent than Missouri or Kent State, we're playing on their level. And because we have more talent, we're going to win. When we play a team that perceivably have equal talent to us, we have came out and dominated. So hopefully, LSU wins tonight against A&M, and the talking points this week that if they win, they're in. So
we have a Georgia fan going to join us here live and in person. Tell us your name.
It's going to come in very motivated.
Tell it one more time.
Leah. Their competition and their competition.
I think it's a really good point, Terrence. Sorry to cut you off there. I think that's a great point. Back to our dog fan here. How'd you feel about the game today?
It was great.
What was your favorite part?
When we gained the lead and running the ball really helped us too.
That's exactly right. Running the ball certainly helped Georgia in a big way. I appreciate you stopping by and being a part of the show, and hope you have a great rest of your Thanksgiving weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Absolutely, and running the ball did work out really well for Georgia today. In fact, so much so that Kenny McIntosh is going to be our player of the game here. So congratulations to Kenny McIntosh on that from our friends at Wilson PC, Personal Injury Attorneys. Of course, they've been doing a great job for us all season long, and that's exactly what our friends at the Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys have been about. And Kenny McIntosh been doing a great job for the Dogs all year long there as well. So terrific work for Kenny McIntosh, who had a nice catch today and obviously was providing the Bulldogs a big effort on the ground there too. And as we were saying with one of our Georgia fans a moment ago, would not be surprising at all as you kind of go down to the sort of the stretch run of the season, you start to think about a guy like McIntosh becoming a very big part of what Georgia's going to be doing here down the stretch. One of those offensive weapons you can really lean on. That's one of the things that we would have said prior to the start of the season, and at times that's been true. And yet, kind of here late in the year, you kind of remind yourself it's becoming really even more and more true there as well. So a big day for Kenny McIntosh. Congratulations to him. We will make him our Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys player of the game here today. And, of course, we certainly appreciate them being a big part of what we've been doing here at Dog Nation all year long there as well as a part of our Dog Nation post-game show. We certainly appreciate that. And, of course, our friends at Wilson PC certainly understand that Atlanta can happen out of nowhere. So if you're driving around the city of Atlanta, you have these unpredictable things that happen. Somebody hits you, bumps into you, you get hurt or injured in an accident. Well, when something like that happens to you, you want to be made whole. You want to be made right. Well, that's what our friends at Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys are all about. They understand how the streets of Atlanta can be unpredictable, or really whatever you're kind of going through, workplace injury, something like that. They can all be very, very unpredictable. And that's why you want to trust our friends at Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys to help step up and provide you all kinds of protection and really make you right and make you whole again if you find yourself dealing with something. So make sure you take a look at the contact information that's on the screen, the website, the phone number. You can reach out to our friends at Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys, and they will get you covered on all that. They present the player of the game here each and every week as a part of our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. And by the way, speaking of the UGA Bookstore, you see me wearing a great-looking jacket here here today. That's the kind of apparel that you got here down there on the first floor. Everybody's kind of shopping and getting stocked up and getting ready for Christmas. Georgia fans know that it's go for 2 in 22 season with the SEC championship next week, with all the fun that could come with the college football playoff after that. Georgia fans getting ready for all of that, and it's going to be a great time. And Terrence, it's one of those moments in which, you know, you kind of have had this run-up of really Georgia for the last few weeks has not had much to play for. It's clinched the SEC East. It's kind of known what its postseason fate was going to be, and you know, you kind of wonder what the level of motivation was. Well, for the rest of the season, you don't have that level of motivation to be curious about anymore. Every game from here on out, my brother was telling me this the other day, I think it's a good point. Every game from here on out has a trophy. You can be SEC champion. You can be the champion of a college football playoff semifinal bowl game, which obviously has some history and prestige. And they have a chance to be a national champion after that. We have reached that time of year in which this is what Georgia kind of has had circled, and now we've kind of reached that moment in which, you know, it's kind of on for Georgia here right now. Obviously next week for the SEC championship. How ready do you think this team is for what comes next now?
I think they're going to be ready. I think, you know, this team loves playing in that Mercedes-Benz Dome. And the last time that we played another season, you know, we played very well and beat Oregon, 49-3. So I think this team is going to be very motivated. This team really wants to win a SEC championship. I think this team wants to bring their own identity from last year's team. The leaders on this team, I think, is going to have this team ready to play. I think it comes down to which Stetsons we get. If we get the middle of the season Stetson, where people, you know, was touting him maybe as a Heisman candidate, then I don't think we'll have a problem. But, you know, the last few weeks, Stetson haven't played very well. And we need the best version of Stetson. Just say for the next 3 games, if we want to repeat as national champion.
Why do you think it is, Terrence, they just didn't throw the ball very much today? You know, obviously the final yardage ends up looking a little bit better because the big pass play to Kenny McIntosh, you really end up having 2 very big explosive plays. They had the 55-yard run and then the big pass as well. Why do you think it is that, I mean, obviously last week you could attribute that to the win. Today, being back home, that wasn't really an issue. And yet, once again, you know, Georgia was pretty content to keep the passing game almost completely under wraps. What do you think that was about?
I don't know. I do know that, you know, if you look at the game, Georgia Tech was really playing with 2 high safeties, so that's enticing, and that's run for scheme-wise, schematically-wise, that's a run play. You got 2 high safeties. Once they start bringing another safety into the box, you'll be able to throw the football. So it just seemed like they was going to be content for us running the ball and not getting big plays. So maybe that was it, but, you know, with a veteran quarterback like Stetson and playmakers on the edge, you still like to see them throw the football more. But whatever it takes to win at the end of the day is to try to score points. And if that's throwing the football or running the football, that's the main objective.
We've got a great dog fan here on the scene. Hold the sign up right there in the camera so everybody can see it. It says, my first college football game. Go Dogs. Indeed, what a great day that was. Tell us your name.
Kinsey J.
And how did you feel about the game today? You can see the Georgia Bulldogs get a win against Georgia Tech.
Yes, I felt great.
What was your favorite part today?
My favorite part was probably when I really don't have a favorite.
They were all good, right?
Yes.
Well, congratulations on making it out to your first game, and hope you have a great rest of your weekend. A lot of dog fans having fun here. Family affair today for Georgia against Georgia Tech. That's certainly been a great thing to be able to see. A lot of dog fans enjoying themselves. You guys want to be on the show? Come on over here. We got some more Georgia fans going to stop by and be a part of this. Y'all come on over. By the way, if you want to join us via Zoom, if you can't be in Athens, you get a chance to do that. Tell us your name.
I'm Kundavi.
Hi, how are you? What's your name?
Bargavi.
What'd you guys feel about the game today?
It was really great.
Absolutely. Georgia 12-0 now, going to the SEC championship. You think they're going to go all the way?
100%. Go Dogs.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming by, guys. Good to see that. So a lot of Georgia fans having fun and enjoying themselves. Terrence, it's that kind of day. Everybody's kind of relaxed and kind of post-Thanksgiving, pre-SEC championship. The mood here is pretty laid back here right now. So I guess you can do with that what you will. Maybe not quite as intense as, certainly not as intense as the Tennessee game was a few weeks ago. A little bit different kind of rivalry atmosphere for Georgia and Georgia Tech today, which I guess sort of speaks to the nature of this Georgia Tech program right now. Not exactly evoking a lot of intensity from these Georgia fans here for the moment.
Yeah. I mean, you can see, it's an early game, too. I just looked at the clock. It's 4:14, so there's a lot of daylight left to enjoy yourself. And after beating Georgia Tech, it's a nice day in Athens, I presume. And it's a lot of tailgating going on. I guess a lot of people sit back and they're tailgating, watch the Alabama-Auburn game just for fun. So it's a nice day. It's always a great theme to beat Tech. Doesn't matter how we play. And we got the rest of the day to enjoy ourselves and enjoy college football.
Some more young fans going to join us. What's your name?
Hudson.
What's your name?
Bo.
How'd you guys feel about the game today?
Good.
What's your favorite part?
My favorite part is the touchdown.
No doubt. That's a lot of fun. You think Georgia's ready to go out and beat LSU next week?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you guys coming and being a part of this. Good to see some good young Georgia fans and some families here having a good time and enjoying themselves. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. And by the way, if you're live via watching us on Facebook or YouTube or any of those comment sections, you can click the Zoom link and you can be a part of the show here too. We'll continue to take your thoughts as Georgia gets ready for the SEC championship next week against the LSU Tigers. So we're obviously looking ahead to that, looking back on the win against Georgia Tech. And, Terrence, it was another moment from today's game late when the outcome had kind of finally been decided that I thought was really pretty impressive. When Georgia starts running those young freshman pass rushers in the game, you saw a 3 consecutive play sequence where it's Marvin Jones Jr. getting after the quarterback. Then it's Bear Alexander getting after the quarterback. Then, at one point in time, it's Mikael Williams right after that getting after the quarterback. I think you were reminded today in the late stages of this game that as good as this Georgia team is, and obviously very much alive for a chance to win the national championship, the future of this Georgia defense is incredibly bright. In fact, you can look ahead to a 2023 or 2024 defense, and you can think, gosh, that group may even be more talented than what Georgia currently has right now. And some of that was kind of on display here in the second half of this game. Amazing to think about the talent that's waiting in the wings at Georgia here right now.
It's good to see Bear Alexander get out there and run around a little bit. Y'all know it's been called playing at that place. His productivity and his skill set. Nolan Smith played his last game. Robert Bill has played his last game. So we're going to need, these younger guys to be the next generation of Georgia greats. And I tweeted, during the game that, one thing that we really need to focus on this offseason, even in recruiting or the porters, edge rushers. I mean, when you lose guys like Adam Anderson and Nolan Smith, it's hard to replace that level of productivity. And to be the team that we want to be year in and year out, you're going to need guys that can get after the quarterback. So I think that's one area of need that Georgia needs to continue to improve is just edge rushers. And I'm really looking forward to the young guys stepping up and whoever comes in the 23 class as well.
We were speaking of young guys stepping up. We've had a lot of young folks stepping up here today. Our camera can't quite see them all, but we got a great collection of Georgia fans here. Tell us your name.
Lauren Crosby.
What's your name?
Eli Crosby.
How'd you guys feel about the game today?
It was great, but the referees were the worst I've ever encountered.
They were the worst I've ever encountered, too, to be honest with you. You agree with that, Laurie?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. So around here we say go for 2 in 22. What that means is we believe that Georgia is going to win a national championship again this year. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
You think that's true?
Yes.
Yes, that's indeed true. Well, listen, y'all have a great time. Thanks for coming by and being on the show. I appreciate that.
A camera something. Did you know Chiz could run really fast and dolphins got really sharp teeth?
Well, there you go. That's all you need to know right there. That's fascinating stuff. First game, well, appreciate that. That's awesome to see. I'm glad y'all had a great time today. That's good to see. So, Terrence, you got a lot of families here having a great time, everybody enjoying themselves, and that's an awful lot of fun. And, of course, that's what the UGA Bookstore is all about. So if you're around here, you can stop by and be a part of the program. We'll give you a chance to say hello. And we'll obviously continue to talk about all this here on the program here today. We'll also take some of our traditional comments on we'll read some of those on Facebook and YouTube and everything else there as well. So, by the way, I think Randy from Tifton's back with us here, too. Randy, you're next up here on the Dog Nation Postgame Show presented by the UGA Bookstore. Randy, go ahead.
Hey, BA, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Randy.
I tell you what, I ain't got much.
Randy, how'd you feel about the game today?
I tell you what, I think the first half we didn't show up, but we finally showed up the second half. But you got to give Georgia Tech credit because they come out and they they busted their butt in the first half. And I think Kirby had to have a talk to them in halftime to get us fired up for the second half. And I think we just went out there and done our wheel. We just pushed them around and just run the ball down their throat.
Yep.
So I'm proud of the win today.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, Randy. A great phone call. And, Terrence, there's something to be said for, how you shake it off when you don't get off to a great start. And obviously, it's a familiar feeling for Georgia, unfortunately, this year. A couple games where they probably started a little slower than they wanted to. But what happens after that, I think it's also part of the story of this team. And they have found a way to kind of fight through adversity. They have found a way to push through whatever they're dealing with. And as Randy says, you do credit the coaching staff for that, kind of rallying the troops after maybe you don't get off to quite the best start you'd like to.
You're right. And, a lot of things have to go right. And I think after that box punt that Georgia Tech had, then the fumble on the next drive,
yeah.
I think that's kind of reignited the board.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We have a little bit of an issue with Terrence's signal there. I want to show this.
We really came out and asked.
I think we're having a little bit of an issue with the Terrence's signal there. Let me show off this great-looking shirt right here. And this is old school right here. This takes it back to the day. The Georgia mascot punching the tech guy in the face. I love that. Tell us your name.
Eric.
Eric, great. I love the T-shirt here, and it's a reminder that, listen, Georgia Tech's been a rivalry for a long time, right? It's mattered to people for as long as a logo like that has been fashionable. So coming out and getting this win against Georgia Tech today, that's a good win it's a good feeling for a Georgia fan, is it not?
Always great to beat the heck out of Tech.
That's exactly right. And
say it on camera.
By all means, you certainly can. You feel good about where Georgia's heading as they head towards SEC championship next week, and what we hope is a trip to the college football playoff after that.
I think they know how to win when they need it. Conserve when they need to, and then beat the brakes off of some people if they have to.
I like that too. Eric, thanks for stopping by, being part of the program. Oh, wow. How about that?
Just appreciate watching you every day.
That's unbelievable. Eric, thank you so much. What a nice collection of that's fantastic. Well, listen, we will love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and hope you enjoy the rest of the run through this season. Great stuff there. Getting gifts today. That's always kind of nice. You can sort of tell we're kind of in a sort of a Christmas holiday type situation here. You got the trees up, the decorations up. Everybody's having a good time, and everybody's relaxed. Thank you very much. What a nice way to kind of close out our regular season and be a part of the program here today. Would you like to be on the show? We'll bring some Georgia fans over here. We'll keep it going. We'll talk to Terrence Edwards some more here, too, and we'll take some of your Zoom calls there as well. So very good stuff. Tell us your name.
Cassie.
Oh, this is our good friend Cassie from the YouTube comment section, right? Well, Cassie, I'm glad to have you here. We read your comments all the time. We love your thoughts on Georgia. How did you feel about the game today?
I felt good about the game. I was always nervous. I'm always nervous for every game, but it was a good game.
So 12-0, undefeated regular season. First time ever that Georgia's ever done that in back-to-back years. That has not happened much in college football over the course of the last few years. Do you think that right now Georgia is, I guess, as ready as it can be for what's coming next?
I mean, they're going to be as ready as they're going to be. I just hope that the refs make better calls.
I know that was not a good day for the officiating today, to be sure. Well, Cassie, we love your comments all the time. Thanks for stopping by and seeing us here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate you being a part of the program. That's our good friend Cassie there, a very regular YouTube commenter, and a lot of fun to have on our program here today. We got a caller ready to go here, too. Mark is here next in the Dog Nation Postgame Show, presented by the UGA Bookstore. Mark, thanks for your time. How about them Dogs? How'd you feel about 37-14 over Georgia Tech here today?
I thought we did really good in the second half. I thought the referees were a little bit iffy, but I really am playing for the championship to come home, and for us to be that number one seed for playoff time.
I think that's a really good point, and I appreciate the call. Is that Georgia is playing, as you said, for more than just a trip to the college football playoff right now. There is something to be said for where Georgia is seated when it gets there, and obviously keeping pace with a Michigan team that remains undefeated today by going on the road and winning against Ohio State. That's clearly a very big win for Michigan, but when you look at the rest of their resume, they don't have a lot to recommend them here. They had a very weak non-conference schedule, and so if you're playing the comparison game with Georgia and other playoff contenders, I don't see Michigan, even though they got a huge win today against Ohio State, among the biggest wins that anybody's gotten this season. I don't see that necessarily eclipsing anything that Georgia has done. So I think that Georgia in all likelihood, if I had to guess, is going to remain the number one team in the country when the college football playoff top 25 comes out again on Tuesday, which means they can get a win against LSU in the SEC championship and really preserve its opportunity to have that game in the college football playoff in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. And I just think you cannot put into words, as our caller was mentioning a moment ago, you cannot put into words how valuable that would be for Georgia to have a chance to play that game in its own state. Not its own stadium, but its own state. In some years, it might not be as valuable as it would be this year. But this year, because of the fact that the other semifinal game is in Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl and the national championship is in Los Angeles, you're talking about a very, very challenging degree of travel for the team that, especially if you're an East Coast team, that has to go to Arizona, either stay out there for the game, a little less than a couple of weeks after that in Los Angeles, or going out and coming back. That just becomes a very, very big challenge for Georgia or whatever team that might be in that situation. So if you could have the game in Atlanta, it'd be a huge, huge, coup for Georgia to kind of cut down on that travel, because you're talking about a level of travel, 2,000 plus miles to Arizona, nearly 3,000 miles going to Los Angeles. You're just talking about a level of travel that college teams just don't go through very much. So if Georgia could have the game in Atlanta, it'd be a very big deal. I believe that Terrence Edwards is back with us here again. Terrence, we were talking about the situation when it comes to, for Georgia, about maintaining its status as the number one team in the country. This is about more than just earning a spot in the playoffs. It's about where you're seated for that playoff. And if Georgia could play that game in Atlanta and avoid the travel to Arizona, knowing that it really only takes the one plane flight the rest of the year to Los Angeles, the national championship, what an unbelievably luxurious situation that would be in to cut down on that travel. It would certainly make winning another national championship way easier for Georgia if it would be able to do that. I'm not hearing Terrence. Maybe we don't have Terrence here right now. Terrence, you may be muted. Go ahead and unmute yourself there. You may have been muted, and we'll give you a chance to weigh in on that. So I'm not hearing Terrence. Maybe we can communicate with him and let him know that he was muted. We'll get him back on here in a moment. I'll also take some time here to read some comments as well. Alan Kent checks in to say Dogs play tremendous defense and special teams, and the offense got the job done. That's exactly right. Georgia Tech, probably somewhat surprisingly, marched down the field to score on the opening drive, and yet the Georgia defense did a good job bouncing back after that. And this ends up feeling like a nice win for Georgia. It was not perfect by any stretch, but certainly you give all three phases some credit there, for what they were able to get done here today. Jerry Popham checking in to say about the Iron Bowl here right now. We'll obviously keep our eye on that. What is the Auburn-Alabama score right now? Okay, is Alabama winning? Yeah. So Bama is winning there. That's. So Auburn scored first, and Alabama has come back after that. So we're keeping an eye on that. If you're just joining us, South Carolina beat Clemson today. Listen, I don't think you can say enough about the job that Shane Beamer has done to salvage his season, getting a huge win against Tennessee, a huge win against the in-state rival Clemson. And trust me when I tell you, that means so much to those South Carolina people. Go back a couple of weeks ago. The way in which South Carolina played at Florida, they were like a dead team walking, and yet completely resurrecting the season. Honestly, if you had to, vote for Coach of the Year right now, I think that Shane Beamer gets way more consideration now for that, based on what South Carolina has done. That's obviously a huge result here today. And, of course, the eyes of the college football world on that Michigan win over Ohio State there as well. So we're watching all of that. Somebody checked in to say 12. Aaron Criswell says 12-0, no complaints here. And listen, I think you could talk about anything you want to from the game as long as you kind of frame it in that context of we've been waiting a long time to see an era of Georgia football that's playing out the way this one is, which doesn't mean you can't point out little things here and there. Doesn't mean you can't obviously talk about what it's going to take to win a game like what's going to happen against LSU and what's going to be coming up after that. But in any kind of situation about maybe what's less than perfect with Georgia, you got to put that in the context of when it comes to the overall record, it could not be more perfect. 12-0 again here right now. Terrence Edwards is back with us. Terrence, I'll bring you back in on what we were talking about a moment ago, the opportunity here to potentially play a national semifinal game in Atlanta if Georgia can hold on to that number one spot, win the SEC championship next Saturday against LSU. to not have to take another plane flight again until the national championship, if that's indeed what Georgia's able to do for itself, that'd be quite a luxury for this team, would it not? So I'm having trouble hearing Terrence. He may be having trouble connecting with us. So let me pop over and get some YouTube comments here for a moment. We'll get ready to start bringing this one to close here. We'll get more of your, obviously, Facebook comments there, too. And if you're still, want to join us via Zoom, we have a little bit of time to do that there as well. A few more minutes here, a part of this here today, and we'll kind of get you going. Senile Joe checks in to say that Ohio State's a joke. Let me say this about Ohio State. This is one of the things I wanted to mention in today's show. So what we said back in the summertime is that there was certainly a case to be made for Ohio State. You could argue for them, obviously being a national championship level team. There was certainly, some thought that could be accurate. But the problem we had at the beginning of the year is the unanimous opinion that seemingly everybody had that Alabama was better than Georgia and Ohio State was better than Georgia. The point that we made back during the offseason was, how could everybody be in agreement on that when Georgia is the reigning national champion? And, certainly while they didn't, lost a lot off last year's team, they clearly were still bringing back a lot of firepower on both sides of the ball. The unanimous nature of that decision we thought was pretty ridiculous. And here we are standing after the regular season looking at Georgia being 12-0. Once again, Ohio State essentially embarrassed in its end-of-season rivalry game against Michigan. Once again, just not physically, mentally tough enough to get it done against the Wolverines. Alabama right now is nowhere to be found. They're winning the Iron Bowl, but that's essentially an inconsequential football game here at this point in time. That's the nature of this that's so, I think, ought to be really enjoyable for Georgia fans, is how many people that have weighed in on the Dogs going back to the preseason all the way through now, how many of those folks have kind of turned out to be wrong as it relates to UGA. That's got to be one of those things that makes you feel really good, knowing that a lot of doubters to Georgia have been silenced over the course of the year, and maybe a few more of those getting silenced as the season rolls on. Terrence is back with us here. We'll continue to get his thoughts here there as well. JSNZ also kind of weighing in on the fact that the game today for Georgia was so close at half. And, Terrence, it kind of circles back to where we've been all day long, that this did not start off very well for Georgia. In fact, in the second quarter, when you thought Georgia might kind of pull away, it took them a little longer to do that. But eventually order was restored. But this first 30 minutes today was not a thing of beauty. And I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat that.
Most definitely. Like I said, I had my attitude coming on was going to be different if we didn't play better in that midway through the third quarter. So I had a lot to say about the inconsistencies of the throwing game, and but my mind kind of changed once the final score ended up being, in our favor. So I just know we just need to get back and understand, what's in front of us. What's in front of us is winning the SEC championship and hosting 2 games in Atlanta, and that's going to be a plus for the Georgia Bulldogs because of operations that have to take place to move your whole operation to a different city. And us being able to play in Atlanta will help Georgia, and I think that's the advantage Bulldogs.
Mayhem Matthew brings up a pretty good question. With Clemson losing today, Clemson was a team that was ranked inside the top 10, but kind of near the bottom of the top 10. They were kind of just on that fringe of a team that was capable of making the playoff, but having lost again, you would assume that's no longer true for them. And with Ohio State losing by a pretty sizable margin to Michigan in their own stadium, you're kind of left to wonder, what does this do to the playoff race here now, where if Georgia wins, it's easy to put them in. Michigan now would seem to have a pretty strong inside track on making the playoff, whether they win the Big Ten title game or not. TCU would now seem to be kind of a win and you're in type scenario. But the question that Matthew asks, Terrence, and I think this is probably a fair question to ask. So right now, Alabama's winning 21-7. Alabama was also ranked seventh last week in the college football playoff top 25. Does Ohio State losing by a pretty sizable margin here today, does a Clemson loss, does that open the door for Bama to still be maybe in some consideration of the playoff, especially if TCU were to lose before the season is done here? Is Alabama with 2 losses still hanging on in playoff contention?
So I got a best friend that grew up with me in Washington County from the Sandbox, and he played football at Bama. And he ran down all these scenarios that why Alabama was going to get in. I just kept telling him it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If TCU loses, Southern Cal loses, Alabama's going to get in, especially with Clemson losing today. I still don't think they will put a 2-loss Clemson, even though they won their conference. I don't think they'll get in. So Alabama is lurking on the outside looking in, and it's a strong possibility that they may sneak their way back into this college football playoff. And I want Alabama again personally. I want to go in, and because Nick Saban said, they rebuilt last year. This will be their best team. So I want to be able to go out and beat their best team. So it's a possibility that Alabama can sneak into this playoff.
I think it'll be very interesting to see how Ohio State is handled after its loss to Michigan. Are they beaten up by the media? Are they kicked around by critics here? Or is this sort of thought of, hey, in a good game between two very good teams, somebody has to lose? I'll be curious to see what kind of treatment Ohio State gets, because if Ohio State is harshly criticized for the fact that it wasn't particularly close in their own stadium against Michigan, then that would seem to open the door for Alabama a little bit more. I think it still takes a lot to get Bama into the playoff. Terrence said, as he said, you're going to think about a USC loss, you're going to think about a TCU loss. But I don't think there's any doubt that if you're a Crimson Tide fan holding on to some sort of faint hope here, the results that you've gotten so far today are probably a little bit of an aid to that. So that might indeed be the case. It's our Dog Nation Postgame Show presented by the UGA Bookstore. It's been fun watching all these families rolling in today, doing a lot of Christmas shopping and getting stocked up on their UGA apparel. And, of course, don't forget the Chub Crunch cereal. That's one of the cool things you can see here at the UGA Bookstore there as well. And I want to take this minute here, too, just to say thank you to the UGA Bookstore, who have provided us so much hospitality over the years, including this year there as well. We've said for a long time this is kind of our home away from home when we've been here at Sanford Stadium, and this will kind of conclude our regular season of being here at the UGA Bookstore. But once again, I'm reminded of just what a great partner the friends of the UGA Bookstore have been for us, and always such a dependable location to be doing our show each and every week after the game. And so hard to believe that we've kind of come to the end of another season here. But once again, the UGA Bookstore has been great for us throughout the entirety of that season. And Terrence, I'm also reminded of this, that it was at the home finale a year ago in which a guy said to me, hey, we may all be back here again in January for a parade and a celebration inside Sanford Stadium. And Terrence, at the time, I'll tell you, that almost seemed like too big of an idea to even speak out loud. The kind of thing of, well, you jinx it if you even talk about it. Well, what ended up happening was Georgia did do exactly that. Georgia was back here at Sanford Stadium for a great celebration there in January. And the weather was beautiful today. Obviously, if we're back here in January, you expect it to be much colder than it was. But I couldn't help think about how fun it was that day to be celebrating that national championship, and how special it might be to think that you could, if you can take care of business with 3 football games remaining for Georgia, if you can do what you need to do and then be right back here in January. The idea this might not be the last time for this year we're here at Sanford Stadium, here in Athens. That is a fun thing to consider, and certainly an exciting possibility here for these dogs.
Oh, most definitely. I didn't get the opportunity to come to the parade per se, but if we get opportunity to do that again in January, I would definitely be there this year.
Let's get some more comments here for a moment. Bubba checks in to say Bama has so many close wins. They've also got 2 losses. They've never looked like a dominant team this year, and I don't think that Bubba's necessarily wrong for that. I think the argument for Alabama is not necessarily that easy, I think, because the fact they don't – I mean, honestly, you'd ask the question of, what exactly is Alabama's best win? I'm not even really sure you see a best win on that resume. So it is certainly not a shoo-in to think that Alabama would be able to make the college football playoff here. But the results of today, I think, thus far have kind of helped the Crimson Tide here, at least with what's gone on. Let me also tell you about this. We are heading towards a great week next week. You mentioned a moment ago the idea of go for 2 in 22. It's exciting to think about what the next 7 days are going to look like around Dog Nation as we head towards Atlanta next Saturday in the SEC Championship. And for us, one of those big events is going to be next Wednesday. We're live at the Marlows in Brookhaven starting at 6 p.m. All of Dog Nation coming together for a live event. We'll do a broadcast, but we'll also do a special behind-the-scenes Q&A, getting ready for the big SEC Championship and the entire Go for 2 in 22 season that comes up after that. So 3575 Durden Drive right there in Brookhaven. That's where the Marlows in Brookhaven is. We can't wait to see you there next Wednesday for an incredibly fun event. We are certainly looking forward to that. Going to be a great time. We can't wait for that. We'll see you there next week at the Marlows in Brookhaven for our big Go for 2 and 22 kickoff event, previewing the SEC championship game, and then looking at everything that comes up after that. It's November 30th. It's this upcoming Wednesday, starting at 6 p.m., 3575. That's the Marlows in Brookhaven. Can't wait to see you there on all of that. We'll take a few more of your comments. We'll get ready to wrap up today's show there as well. Hoping to hear from Georgia Coach Kirby Smart here before we're done. We'll see if we get a chance to do that too. So final comments. We'll also look at some scores here coming up before we wrap this show up there today. Anderson pointing out that Auburn has now scored again. So they're 21-13, extra point pending. It's 9:34 to go, second quarter of play. So Auburn has cut this game to within a touchdown here. So in what is likely to be the final game of the Cadillac-Williams era as the Auburn interim coach, Tigers are fighting hard here against Alabama. And I guess, Terrence, since we're talking about the Iron Bowl, I guess let's talk about the odd sequence that's unfolded with Alabama, I should say with Auburn, over the course of the last couple of days, where at one point in time it seemed like it was a given that Lane Kiffin was about to be the next Auburn coach. He coached in the Egg Bowl on Thursday. His Ole Miss team seemed to be a little bit distracted by that. I think it was expected that Kiffin would then be announced as the Auburn coach shortly after the Egg Bowl. Well, Kiffin kind of pushed back on that being reality, and today we find out that no, Kiffin's going to sign a contract, stay at Ole Miss. Attentions have now been turned to former Ole Miss coach Hugh Freeze, now at Liberty. Liberty was getting blasted today, by the way, against New Mexico State. That's kind of an odd addendum to the story, but how about the idea of Cadillac coaching for Auburn today, Lane Kiffin apparently choosing not to come to Auburn, them turning their attention to Hugh Freeze, who obviously was a very controversial figure in the SEC a couple of years ago. It has been quite a turn of events at Auburn here over the course of the last couple of days. Not much of a Thanksgiving for the folks on the Plains as they've been left trying to figure out who their next football coach is going to be.
It's a very difficult situation, I think, for everyone. For the players, the recruits at Ole Miss, hearing your coach in the news every day saying that he's going to leave, and he's kind of got to reassure them that he's not leaving. I think that the Twitter world has already tabbed him as the next coach at Auburn. So recruiting-wise, that you have recruits that really don't know what's going to go on. So he got to reassure those guys that, Cadillac, everyone wants Cadillac to be the next coach because he's done a great job with those players. So it's just a strange situation, for everyone, just not the families of the coaches, recruits, current players, and the school as a whole. So, I like Lane Kiffin. I never thought he was going to leave. I always thought that this was a play to get the stay at Ole Miss. I think he's good for Ole Miss. I think Hugh is a tremendous coach. Has done a lot of great things at Liberty. I think he understands the SEC landscape, and I think he'll be a better hire than Brian Harsin. I'm looking forward to see this ending and see where it goes.
JC's next here on the Dog Nation Postgame Show, presented by the UGA Bookstore. JC, we'll give you the final word here today from our callers. How about them Dogs? How'd you feel about Georgia getting an in-state rivalry win against Georgia Tech and running its record to 12-0?
ABA and Terrence.
Hey, JC.
Yeah, great win. Yeah, great win today. Yeah, we came out a little sluggish today a little bit, but we came on and won. So we just got to get ready for LSU next week, and hopefully we don't come out like that in the first half.
Yeah, JC, that's a great point. Appreciate the phone call. And, Terrence, the one thing that we know is against a team the caliber of LSU, as JC was saying, you cannot afford to have a slow start against that team. That team, listen, I'll be honest with you, Terrence. While I would obviously pick Georgia to win next week, I don't think LSU is going to be a pushover. Georgia's going to be, more than a 2-touchdown favorite in the game. But I think that there's a chance that LSU actually might be the best team that Georgia plays for the remainder of this season. And I think you do have to play well for all four quarters. That means getting off to a fast start. That means finishing strong there as well. While I expect Georgia to beat LSU, I'm honestly not expecting this to be a pushover game at all. I think that Georgia's going to have to fight hard to win the game, and that's going to have to begin from the word go next Saturday.
They started the season off very slow, but they ended the season just like you want to end. Now look at. I don't think anyone thought LSU would be in the SEC championship game at the beginning of the season. So they just continue to play, continue to believe, and now they're in the game that they want to be in. So it's not going to be a pushover defensively. They can rush the passer with their front four, as we saw last week. So it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for us to get back to playing to the level of our competition. And I can't wait to see what Stetson and company are able to do against LSU's defense.
Let's get ready to go cruise around the SEC right now, courtesy of Royal Caribbean, and we'll check out some of these scores from both SEC games, but also look at some of the rest of the top 25 here there as well. Going back to Thanksgiving night, we mentioned the Egg Bowl a moment ago. Lane Kiffin certainly at the center of controversy in a way that really Ole Miss fans weren't too happy about, nor were they happy about that result in Oxford the other night as Mississippi State gets the win 24-22. Also a fun rivalry game last night. Saw Florida State get the win against Florida, but maybe Gators keeping it much closer than a lot of folks expected, given the way that the Seminoles have been playing coming into that game. 45-38 was your final there. Elsewhere in top 25 action there, too. Obviously, we're waiting on later on tonight, Tennessee and Vanderbilt to get going at 7:30 p.m. Another game we're looking forward to seeing tonight is Notre Dame and USC. Kind of excited about that. But maybe one of the bigger shockers of all today is the fact that South Carolina, for the second consecutive week, has pulled an outright upset win in a very high-profile spot. Last week hanging 63 points against the Tennessee Vols. Obviously, it was a raucous environment at Williams-Brice Stadium. Going on the road the week after that, never an easy thing to do. But stepping into Death Valley today, they get the 31-30 win. An unbelievable turn of events to conclude the season for Shane Beamer there at South Carolina. You have to give him a ton of credit for that. And, of course, a game that a lot of folks were watching very closely today, simultaneous to the Georgia Tech game. The fact that Michigan goes into Columbus, gets the win 45-23 against Ohio State. 2 consecutive wins in this series now for Michigan. And for Jim Harbaugh, who, frankly, a couple of years ago was kind of the butt of jokes around college football and a bit of a caricature-type figure, I think he has completely resurrected his reputation. I think he's completely remade himself here. And all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh looks like one of the top coaches in the sport, certainly in the Big Ten, with the way that he has found a way to beat Ohio State again. So quite a weekend continuing to unfold here when it comes to college football, and that look around all of this presented by our friends at Royal Caribbean. And by the way, I'll also tell you 21-14 Iron Bowl there as well. Alabama on top of Auburn. We're late second quarter in that game, so we're watching that there too. And all of this, of course, brought to you by our friends at Royal Caribbean. And it just so happens I was walking around the field before the game and bumped into our good friend Joanne from Royal Caribbean, who she knows I've got a big trip coming up on Wonder of the Seas, that gorgeous cruise ship. As it stands right now, Wonder of the Seas, largest cruise ship in the world. And so I'm going to be on that here coming up very, very soon as a way of celebrating kind of the point in the season we're at so far, and also kind of recharging the batteries to get ready for the college football playoff run that we hope is coming up after that. And so Joanne was talking to me a little bit about that a little earlier, and I was so happy to kind of share some of that with her about how excited that I am to be a part of that. My encouragement is to you to get your own Royal Caribbean cruise vacation booked and get ready for that. It's going to be a great time for all of us coming up in April when we do the Dog Nation cruise, second ever cruise with Dog Nation. Of course, our good friend Jessica Slater is a terrific travel agent. She was specially selected for us by Royal Caribbean to get booked up on this great cruise vacation. So she's made a website. It's called royaldogs.com. It's royaldogs.com. You can go check that out and find out about all the really fun things on board Independence of the Seas. We're sailing out April 24th from Port Canaveral, which is just a short drive down the road from Orlando. We're going to Perfect Day Coco Cay, that wonderful private island. Going to go to Nassau in the Bahamas. It's going to be an unbelievable experience. And in addition to all the great stuff you get as a part of the traditional Royal Caribbean cruise vacation on board Independence of the Seas, you also get a special Dog Nation events there too. It's going to be a great time. We hope to see you there for that. So check out the website, royaldogs.com, or give Jessica Slater a call. Her number, of course, you can find that there on the screen. The story here, though, from Athens is a Georgia win over Georgia Tech with the SEC championship looming next Saturday. Terrence, before we get ready to wrap things up, how about a couple of final thoughts from you?
Thoughts was consistency is how. What are we going to look at like versus LSU? Every time we play against a opponent that we feel that's on our level, we play better. Every time that we went to an opponent that we know we're more talented, we play down to their level, but our level is just a little bit better than theirs because we are the more talented team. So going into this is the big, trying to win We didn't win SEC championship last year, so trying to just play better against the SEC opponent in the SEC championship game, and then just see where the chips may fall, and hopefully we can get the games back in the Mercedes-Benz and the Peach Bowl, and let's just get ready and try to defend our title.
We'll get the final word here today to Georgia coach Kirby Smart, who in the post-game press conference a couple of moments ago on the subject of those Georgia seniors, huge number of them, 24, I believe, in total, that kind of walked today as a part of senior day. Some of those guys may come back next year, but by the technical definition, our seniors here right now, Kirby says they meant so much. This group's 46-5 on the field right now. Their leadership, our consistency in each and every one of those from walk-ons to scholarship guys, they're all deserving of the recognition. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing to say. And obviously I always find myself, I'm a pretty sentimental guy in general, so I'm always very moved by these moments in which you do say goodbye to some guys for the final time, playing their final game here in Sanford Stadium. And there's no doubt this group has been an incredibly special group of seniors, and certainly their legacy, which is still being written here right now as you move towards the postseason, they will have a very hallowed place in the history of this program indeed. And by the way, speaking of hallowed history, Kirby also talking post-game about a special Vince Dooley-themed tie that he wore today, obviously in honor of Vince Dooley, who had a public ceremony last night remembering his life and legacy. My understanding is that was a beautiful, beautiful event, and obviously a lot of Georgia fans remembering Coach Dooley's life and legacy here this weekend, and to see Coach Smart do that here today was a great thing to be able to see there too. So we're excited about what has been an unbelievable season, and we're excited about where it's going to go from here. So thank you all for being a part of our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore. For Terrence Edwards, I'm going to say we'll look forward to talking to you again next week from downtown Atlanta, where Georgia tries to win the SEC for the first time since 2017, get to 13-0 for, I guess, the first time ever, I guess, with a thought of pursuing a national championship after that. Go for 2 in 22. It is on. It is next. We appreciate you being here for our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore.